Welcome to another episode of 50 Shades of Shilamida with your hostess, Shilamida. I am so super excited for my guest today. She has become a very dear friend over the last several weeks. I will tell you why and what got me to love her to the core. But before I do that, I would like to introduce to you Reverend Lynn LaBorde. She is a gifted spiritual healer and teacher with 50 years of education, experience, and training. She is a certified spiritual consultant and is the co-founder of the sohmalife Sanctuary in Huntington, Long Island. Since opening 6 years ago, over 1,000 taught by 50 different teachers in some 450 classes. Wow. As a transformational alchemist, clients trust her to integrate and release trapped and stagnant energy, as well as emotional blockages within their energetic field. Lynn turns their lead into gold or darkness into light. Please help me welcome Reverend Lynn LaBorde to the show.
Hi.
Yay! I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Yes.
So for those of you that are listening, Lynn and I have been in not one, but two masterminds together. And the first mastermind we were in, Lynn didn't get to speak that much. So she got to know me more than I got to know her. And we've been in the same circles for a while. And I guess it was over the summer, I was listening to something and Lynn came on and she was like, I am a weirdo. I channel Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And our mentor was like, but there are other weirdos just like you. And I was like, fuck yeah. And then we were on a call, like the very first week of our new mastermind that we were just in. And Lynn gets on and says, I love Jesus and I love to say the word fuck. And I was like, that's my homegirl right there. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. I am in my favorite place of all time in my bed because you are one of my favorite people. So I just figured that the energy would align this way.
I love that, babe. I absolutely love that.
So I want to know all the things. We have done some work together, which we'll get into, but I want to know, when did you become Reverend Lynn? When did you start knowing that you love Jesus, you channel Jesus, you channel all of these ascended masters? How did this happen for you?
So the reason I say that I've been doing this for 50 years is I'm 61. And when I was 11 years old, my mom gave me a copy of a book that was called The Sleeping Prophet, and it chronicled the life of Edgar Cayce, who's known as the most profound psychic medium that ever lived. He would go into this trance and he would channel information from the Akashic records. And even at 11 years old, I was like, the Akashic records, like I got goosebumps. Like, why did that sound familiar? Why did it feel like home? And in my mind, you had to go to India to get your Akashic records read. But I started doing all this kind of investigation into like meditating and levitating and past lives. And at the time, it was like Chariots of the Gods by Eric Von Daykin was published. Shirley MacLaine was just coming out with all of her spiritual books. And so there wasn't a lot to go with. But over the years, I started to get trained in how to do past life work with people. And then in 2017, we'd already opened the sohmalife Sanctuary, which is a lifelong dream of having a wellness center where we could, become like the hub of the worldwide wellness community and share people's gifts and abilities, from God. And I see a girlfriend of mine and she's like, hey, I just got trained to read the Akashic records. Who would like a reading? And I called her on the phone and I was like, Tiffany, what? Tell me everything. And she goes, I got trained by this woman who was trained by this person, who got trained by this person, who got trained by Linda Howe. And Linda Howe had written a book called How to Read the Akashic Records. And I was like, oh my God, can you do a reading? She did a reading for me. And I swear to God, I was crying the entire time. And I was like, what is this? So the Akashic records are kind of like the iCloud of all of our soul's wisdom and knowledge, every thought we've had, every feeling we felt, every word we've ever spoken, every action, every lifetime, all of it. So I signed up for Linda's class, which was beginning in 2018. I did a 3-month immersive. I became an advanced Akashic records practitioner. And then I was told by my own records that I was a guardian and I needed to start teaching this to other people. So that's been a big part of my life's journey. But from when I was little, I started my official psychic training in 1989.
Wow.
And, from there, I've had like 29 certificates. I've done so much training and development. And then I started my own academy a couple of years ago, and it's called the Soul Mastery Academy. And I'm teaching people how to connect with their souls, how to connect with their higher selves, how to find their soul purpose, how to find, when I was really young, someone said to me, what do you think your purpose is? And without even blinking, I said, to remind people of their relationship with God. And I was like, wait, where did that come from? But like that incredible experience that we had when we had lunch last week, I know how to help people get directly into and in touch with their relationship with Jesus and other ascended masters.
Yeah, I love that. So just for the audience, for those of you that are new, I grew up Jewish, but not religious at all. I became spiritual at the age of 23. I found Kabbalah. It really helped me. I was really angry. I had a lot of, mommy and daddy issues. Both of my parents had cancer, and Kabbalah really helped me to become a good person. And once I got engulfed in that, I started just absorbing all the things. Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Doreen Virtue, which, by the way, she went in the Jesus route too, but I think
She went
different,
little,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She fell in love with a man who said, if you are a follower of Jesus, you have to understand that everything that you're doing is of the devil. And she kind of went in the other direction.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because there's new age Jesus lovers, right? And then there's Christian Jesus lovers, from what I'm discovering right now. And so what happened is, over the past, I would say, year to year and a half, I have been getting several messages that have been leading me towards God and towards Jesus. And then my little guy, Bennett, came home a few weeks ago, months ago, I guess at this point, and we have a gratitude practice, and every night we're grateful. And one night he was grateful for God, grateful for Mother Nature, and grateful for the earth. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. And God was not a word that I used in my house. I always referred to God more as universe or source. So it wasn't something that he heard here. And then days later, he was grateful for God, grateful for Mother Nature, grateful for the earth, and then grateful for Jesus. And so my husband and I looked at each other and we just kind of let it go. And then the next night, he was grateful for Jesus again. Then night 3, he was grateful for Jesus again. And then I said to him, Bennett, where did Jesus come from? Why are you grateful for Jesus? And he was like, what, Mom? I love Jesus. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And so that's the kind of parent I am. I feel that my children were brought to me for me to guide them, not for me to tell them what, is and what isn't, and what they shouldn't do. And so I started to explore Jesus with him, and I started texting Lynn, and I was like, Lynn, what do I do with all of this information? And so Lynn has been an integral part of me and my learning. And for Bennett's birthday, I took him to see Lynn in the city. We did an Akashic record for him. I as well had an Akashic reading done, not only with you. I've actually had this done during COVID too, because I was deep into shadow work then. So it's super interesting. I would love to share some of the things that you said to me to help the audience really understand what the Akashic records is all about. So in my reading, I had asked the question, what is it that I still need to heal in this life? And
Right.
So Lynn went into a channel, right? She turned into a channel. And I think you said to me, or the channel said to me, that I still have 1,647 things that I need to heal from in this life. I was like, oh shit. Thought it was much further ahead than that, but I guess it's better than 5,000.
Right.
And then the channel said to me that I still had healing to do with my mom, right? So the mom wound has been a thing that I've been working on for many, many, many years. This is going back to my 20s when I first started learning about spirituality. I learned that I had all these mommy issues. And so in this reading that I did with Lynn, what she had said to me was that my mother and I were sisters in past lives, that we were role reversed. I was the mother, she was the daughter, and that there was a lot of jealousy that took place within these lives. And it was like this light bulb went off as she was saying these things to me, because sometimes I feel that, right? Sometimes I can feel that there's this jealousy between us where I'm like, Mom, can't you just love me for who I am? And it's like, there's like just this energy. So and that's what I think is so fascinating about the Akashic Records. It's not just a reading, it really connects you to what is and what was, and to help you reframe what you're living through right now, right?
There's tremendous healing that occurs in the Akashic Records because, you can go on it's like you read a book versus you dive into the book and you actually live the experience of it. And what the Akashic Records are going to bring up to the surface is areas where you still hold and harbor some fear, some pain, some resentment, places of forgiveness. So Jesus and I had a conversation recently, and I said to him, I've been watching The Chosen. I go, how are you so incredibly psychic? And he said, when John the Baptist baptized me in the Sea of Galilee, he said I had a Kundalini download and that literally blew open all of my chakras. And what came to the surface were all of like the rocks, the boulders, the places of being stuck, the energy that had been hardened because there was fear and it had petrified. And he said, and for 40 days and 40 nights, I faced every single one of my fears. And he's told us, like there's a group of us that are studying his materials. And he said, do this work. Look at everyone that you hold, any resentments, anyone that you have any pain with, any places that you have fear, and go into it, like dive into it and learn to love it. What is it that you fear? And he said, I faced every single fear I had. He said, I was completely blown out. All of his clairs, his like extrasensory abilities, clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance became wide open. And he knew everything. Like that scene where he meets the woman at the well and he starts telling her who the 5 husbands were. And she's like, how do you know this? And he says, I am the Messiah. And now is the time to tell everyone. And it's funny because when I first got these gifts, when I went to Israel in 2009, I laid my hands on the grave of a dead guy, and the guy in the grave starts talking to me. This golden shaft of light comes down and he's telling me all this information. And I was like, what? This is real. I thought I was like having an acid flashback, and I've never tried acid. I didn't know what was going on. But when we get blown open like that, like your son's gifts are incredible. His clairvoyance, his clairaudience is remarkable. So, and it was really interesting because with an adult, a session takes longer, but with kids, you go right into it because they don't have all the stuff in the way. But when you face your fears, you remove all the places where you've put up blockages, and then your psychic abilities turn on like crazy. Right. And that's what this is. Really fascinating.
Yeah, what I'm learning now and what I'm really connecting to is this whole level of right and wrong, right? We come into this human race and we come in as love and as light, and then we learn fear, right? Like we are taught to be afraid of things. And even you being so free and so open about speaking about channeling and all these things, like this is recent for you, right? Like this wasn't always something that was so open to the public. And
Nope. I was a licensed stockbroker. I was a general securities advisor for one of the largest private banks in the world in Beverly Hills and New York. And I was managing $500 million. I couldn't, someone would sit down and their dead uncle was right there. And the dead uncle would say, well, why don't you tell them to invest in so-and-so? And I'd say, hey, what about investing in so-and-so? And they'd be like, I've had that thought about doing that. And the uncle's like, yeah, because I've been whispering to them. They're not listening to me. I can't tell them that the dead uncle's here telling me this thing. And so we'd invest, and it was a great success. But, or I would do healing work with people, and then I'd be like, don't tell anybody that we've done this. And then there's just this point now, like I was on TikTok the other day. I'm so close to 10,000 followers where it unlocks like, all these other prizes. And so I was like, okay, well, Jesus comes into me and we lay our hands on people. And I've been pulling, I've been helping people heal, and I'm pulling pain out of people's shoulders. And I'm helping someone that's got Parkinson's disease and pulling the pain out of their body. And they're like, oh my God, I don't feel pain anymore. And I lost like 25 followers because I'm suddenly talking and I'm saying Jesus's name, and I'm saying he comes into my body. I call it turducken. The chicken goes into the duck goes into the turkey. And, it's like God goes into Jesus, Jesus comes into me. We lay our hands on people. I feel him pull the pebbles, the boulders, the dark energy out of people. It goes through me. I cry, and then the energy's gone. And that's how I know that the healing happened. So, I'm talking about that publicly. I used to be like, I could never remember the first time Jesus came to me. I had a client who was suicidal, and she said, "Can you ask Jesus if it's okay if I commit suicide?" And I'm like, "Nope, I'm not asking him." And she goes, "You have to ask him, ask him, ask him." So I opened her Akashic records, and she's screaming at the records, "I don't want this life. I don't want to be alive." And all of a sudden I feel this energy, and it kind of like taps me on my shoulder. And he's like, "May I have this dance?" And I'm like, "Come on in." And he starts talking to her, and she screams at the energy, and she goes, "Who do you think you are, God?" And he goes, "I am the one that you know is Jesus." And on the inside, I'm like, "Fuck no, I am not doing this. I am not going to be the one that's known as the channeler of Jesus. Like, that's not on my watch. That's not happening." And today, that's what I do. Be careful what you be careful what you say. No.
Never say never, Lynn. Never say never. It's
Exactly.
like it comes back to haunt you every single time. It's like as soon as that word is about to like leave my consciousness, I'm like, don't say that out loud.
Chill, it's been so crazy. So, you've watched me, when Melanie said to us, "What don't you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't want to color my hair." And I shaved my head. I don't want to be in hiding anymore. I want to let people know, like, this is the hat. This is hilarious. This is the hat I wear at the airport. My I Love Jesus hat. And I call it my sorting hat because people are either going to fully engage with you or they're going to want nothing to do with you.
Right.
But, I have a relationship with him that's really intense. In a past life, I remember being one of his younger sisters, so it's a very, very intimate. He's definitely my best friend. And he comes with a lot of other cool beings that show up, like Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, Archangel Michael, a whole bunch. So it's really.
I love it. I love all of it because it's all new to me, So I've heard of Mary Magdalene before, and I've heard of Mother Mary, and I've had them come in through healings with other people, but I never understood like the history of it. So now that I am engulfed and indulged in the history of the, quote unquote, the religion, but I'm able to separate the fact from fiction, let's say. I don't know that it's necessarily fiction, but I feel that religion is man-made.
Yes.
And that, everybody keeps saying, well, read the scriptures, read the scriptures. If you really want to have a relationship with Jesus, read the scriptures. But the truth is that the scriptures have been rewritten, retold. Like the New Testament that everybody keeps telling me to go to, there are not even people that knew Jesus. This came after Jesus was even alive. So, I'm reading this amazing book, Conversations with God. And one of the first things that God, quote unquote, says in the book is that when he communicates with us through thought and through feeling. And word comes last because word can be misinterpreted.
Yes.
And I think that is so important because I feel that people do not have that inner connection, right? And that's definitely been me, like until COVID, really, like that inner knowing, that inner nudge, that inner voice, I always ignored that. And your assignment to Bennett was that he needed to speak to Jesus every night for 7 nights. So every night I'm like, Bennett, did you talk to Jesus? And he was like, yes. Did you talk to Jesus? So now I am also having conversations with Jesus. And I am really connecting to this feeling inside of me and knowing that I am also a channel. I've always channeled. I just didn't realize that I was channeling. And because I'm a 6 line in human design, I started to understand that I channel through my stories, right? So when I was a licensed acupuncturist, sometimes I would walk out of a room and I would walk back into my office and I would be like, what is wrong with you? Why did you just tell that story? Right. Yes. And I would like tell the randomest story and then I'd be like embarrassed about the story. And the next week that patient would come back and be like, you have no idea. That story changed my life. Right. So it's all about understanding that we are all gifted. We are all psychic. It's just a matter of, are you ready to connect to that part of you? Because when you make that connection, there is this level of weird, right? Like we are a little bit quote unquote weird because the normal people, and I say that in quotations too, they don't walk around talking about channeling, right?
But think of it, we're channeling our higher selves. And the priests say that they channel Jesus. So why is it just relegated to the priests? And you know what Jesus says? That is not my book. And those are not my buildings. And he's talking about the Bible and he's talking about the churches. if you want to know who really talked to him, go and find the Gospel of Thomas. Go and find the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Go and find what was left in the finds of Nag Hammadi. If you want to know how he lived, read the Essene Gospel of Peace. There's so much more that's available to us than what's been indoctrinated to us through the church. I am, I am spiritual, but I am not religious. And I love Jesus and I channel Jesus and I love to say the word fuck. And, people are trying to make comments about that, like, oh, you shouldn't curse. And I'm like, whatever.
Well, this goes back to that whole right and wrong thing, right? And I've been questioning right and wrong for a really long time because obviously I think that it's wrong to go murder another person, right? Like I don't think that it's quote unquote right to do that. However, there was a point in our lives where we employed somebody who went to jail for murder, and he was one of the most kindest, loving, helpful individuals. And I let him around my home and I let him around my children because I believe in forgiveness. And I started to question right and wrong. And, if we go into the animal kingdom, which is part of God's kingdom, right? And we look out in nature, animals kill one another and animals steal from each other. And we as human beings, we kill animals in order to eat, right? So aren't we sinning every single day? Like if we really follow the Bible and the 10 Commandments and we're supposed to, thou shalt not, it's like every single day you're sinning based on these 10 Commandments.
Right.
And one of the most powerful things that is said in this Conversations with God is he says, do you think that I would put you down on earth with free will and give you a set of rules that I knew that you were going to break? Right. He said, what kind of king of the kingdom would I actually be?
So can I have a quick conversation with you about a question you asked me yesterday about Lucifer?
Yes.
Okay. So God goes to his chosen angel, Lucifer, morning star, the bringer of light. And he said, listen, I trust you above all others. I'm going to create a race of beings, and they're going to be called humans. They're going to be given free will. They're going to be given a choice between the light and the dark. I need you to go down and I need you to represent the darkness. And we're going to stage a fight, and it's going to look like I kicked you out of heaven. And when the last soul chooses light over darkness, we're done. Lucifer goes, you can count on me. I'm your guy. So all that happens. I had this dream that one time Lucifer said to God, are we done yet? And God's like, not yet. Lucifer's like, but I'm tired. I really want to come home. And God goes, almost, but not quite. Then I read this in Memnoch the Devil by Anne Rice. And then I was taught this in Kabbalah 3. And I was like, get out of here. Then I read Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And the devil says to him, listen, the only thing I'll tell you my secrets of how it is that I control humanity, but I have one caveat. You have to refer to me as your majesty. So Napoleon Hill gives him that. And then Lucifer says, there's me and there's my opponent. He calls God the opponent. And he goes, so we're 50-50. And he said, but the reason I have 98% control of humanity is because I work harder. And I've created this thing called hypnotic rhythm, where I get people in this flow. And it's like when you see a leaf in a whirlpool, like that leaf can't get out. It's in that hypnotic rhythm. He said, the most dangerous man to me is the man who thinks for himself. And I was reading this thing today, and Jesus was saying, look, you weren't trained in school how to think for yourself.
Right.
He said that basically, like, most of you were never taught as a child to keep your mind silent and to listen to your inner voice. You're in a heart-shaped space when there's no mind involved. The decision that you make is not made by the mind, but it's made by the guidance that you receive when you're present. And he talks so much about the importance of being present, and how you learn to be present is through meditation and silence, not through the noise, not through the news, not through all the chatter, but in the silence. That's where I have the most beautiful conversations with him.
Yeah. And most people,
all of us.
Yeah. Most people are afraid of silence. They're afraid of listening to their own thoughts. They're
immersed in their phones and their TVs and, their gossip and all that. Just get silent, get present, get quiet, and let it unfold. It's extraordinary what's there.
I read a book to bed it the other night, and it was a kid's book based off of conversations with God. And it was actually a little bit harder than conversations with God, I felt like. But it talks about, and Kabbalah says the same thing, how we come from the light, right? Like we start off as light. But think about it, if you were happy all of the time and there was no duality, like you never felt sadness, you never felt pain, you never felt anger, that eventually you would get bored.
Yeah.
And so this is why God created earth and free will, is because in the light there's the knowing, right? Like you just know that life is good. You don't know anything else.
Right.
But on earth, you get to experience. And in the experience, you get to decide that you want to be a part of the light or you want to be a part of the darkness.
And I've had lifetimes where I've definitely been a part of the darkness. I remember when I was about 8 years old, I'm like, am I good or evil this lifetime? This voice came in and said, you're walking the path of light. And I'm like, okay, thank you. It's funny, I have a girlfriend who does paintings, and she painted Archangel Michael and she painted Lucifer at the same time. She had to paint both of their energies. And she showed me the painting of Lucifer, and I'm like, oh my God, he's so like, and so he'll come around every once in a while and he's like, hey, and I'm like, get away from me. We're not doing it this lifetime. We've done it before, but not this lifetime. This lifetime I'm with Michael. Get out. You know, it's like you have to be able to play with all of it.
Yeah.
You know, and Jesus is like, he gives it to you straight, man. He is one of the funniest, but one of the most, like, he doesn't mess around, you know? So all the stuff where people are scared or, you know, like, oh, the devil. No, it's not like that. Everything is made of light. There's light even in the darkness.
Right.
You just have to look for it. You have to be willing to find it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I resonate with that completely. And it's just been like such a great journey, because I've thought of these things before and there was just like nobody ever to talk to about this stuff. Like people just thought I was nuts. And I remember being in college and, you know, I smoked a lot of weed and I did a lot of drugs, and everybody was religious then around me. And I would be like, hey, listen, how do you know that the Bible wasn't written by a couple of dudes on acid, tripping their faces off, and they just like decided to write this book, you know? And people would like look at me like I had 45 heads.
Right.
And then one day I got led to Kabbalah. And I remember this was 20
Kabbalah was
years
my
ago.
redemption. It
Yeah.
was my redemption.
It was a one-page website, right? We're going back 20 years. It was one page, and the first paragraph said, do you ever feel like you're different than everybody else? Do you feel like you've lived this life before? Do you feel like you need to be guided? And I remember looking at my roommate and I'm like, oh my God, there's other crazies just like me. Like I'm not the only one, because I literally thought I was crazy. And by the time I was 30, I was really awakening in a big way. And I was surrounded by so many closed-minded people, and it was just not normal. And now I'm so happy. Like, I love the fact that I could just text you and be like, hey, Lynn, let's talk about the devil. Like, is this really a guy or is this an energy? Or, you know, and like, you think I'm normal, right? Like, and I think that you're normal, and we're living in this weird world. And it's funny because I almost forget what it was like to be surrounded by so many closed-minded people. And luckily, like my social media is all people who are in alignment, and even people who are not in alignment, they have respect because they've watched my growth. Yeah. And they've watched my expansion, and they understand that maybe they don't agree, but there might be some kind of something around the things that I'm saying.
Yep,
right?
Exactly. In 2001, a coworker, when I was first doing financial services, he came to me and he gave me a book called The Book of Kabbalah by Yehuda Berg. And I remember reading that book and going, oh my God. And then in 2005, another friend said, you know, hey, I go to the Kabbalah Center. And I'm like, Kabbalah Center? So I started going in Los Angeles, and then I moved to New York, and I've got a teacher here. There's so much wisdom. And it's interesting because there's a book called the Sophia Code. And in the Sophia Code, Isis says that what is known as modern day Kabbalah is what was taught in the temples that Jesus studied and that others studied from Egypt. Like the technology that I teach my students, the tools that I have for soul elevation and for soul mastery. This is all stuff that's come to me through Isis, through Hathor, through Jesus, through Magdalene, through Mother Mary, through Archangel Michael, Sanat Kumara, who's the Lord of our universe. Jesus said he works for Sanat, and through Venus, through Athena, through these incredible ascended masters that are like operating at the 5th, 6th, and 7th dimensions. And again, it's so nice that I can reach out to you and tell you these things, and you're not like, okay, you're another weirdo. It's like you just.
I'm like, tell me more.
I thank you for that. And then we've got another dear friend named Leah, and Leah's like, yeah, I don't believe in God. I don't believe anything you guys are saying, but I love you. We're like, thank you, Leah. Thank you for keeping it real.
I think it's hilarious that we have these conversations in a 3-way conversation, and Leia's like, like, what are these two talking about?
She's like watching mama. She just like upset. I said, you're like Alcyone, you're like the central sun, and you're like, what satellite, what star, what moon, like she's just the hub of love. She's so amazing. And then there's Michael. He's another part of our posse. And Michael is an extraordinary hypnotist. I mean, just extraordinary.
I paid for my session, but I have to schedule my session. So actually, thank you for the reminder. I'm going to do that right after this to make sure I get on that schedule, because
he's gotten busy.
The healing work is the real work. It's why we're here. It's like, if you're watching this and if you've never done any kind of healing work and all of this information is new to you, you're welcome. And I'm sorry at the same time, because it really is a rabbit hole of, I've been doing this for 20 years. And the fact that I did that Akashic record with you, and I thought I've healed the mommy stuff, and no, like the mommy stuff is still there, and while it's gotten better, it's still there, and it still needs to be deciphered. And I just want to go back to something that you said about Jesus being funny. Is something that I've learned recently is that in the online presence, that people think that I'm like very serious, and that, like, I don't know, when the cameras go off, I think they just think I'm like philosophical and like mean and just whatever. But I really love to have fun, and I love to laugh, and I love to smile. And in watching The Chosen and reading Conversations with God, it's like the repeated thing is that Jesus is funny, God is funny. God was in the book, when I say God, I say it in quotations based on this book, but God says, like, I am the one that created laughing, and I am the one that created these emotions. Like, don't you think that I get to experience them too? But, when you talk to a lot of people will listen to this conversation and they'll get offended, right? Like, how dare you speak of Jesus and God in such a way? Right. But it's like, that's the problem.
They get scared.
Yeah.
What happens is they get scared. It shakes their foundation.
Because their religion has told them that God is so serious, and that when you refer to God or you refer to Jesus, that you have to do it in such an appropriate way. But it's really not like that. And I think that if people knew that you're allowed to have fun, you're allowed to joke around, you're allowed to laugh, and not have to be so serious. And it's like, just like the judgment that's been placed around me, like, I'm not that serious. Like, I talk about serious things, but as soon as like that thought has left my mind, I'm laughing and I'm thinking about the next thing, because this life is short. And if there's anything that I've learned, it's like, if you're going to hold on to something for a long time, that's living in hell. Like, that's literally living in hell. You got to like move through it and let it go and keep going.
I always thought that, like, when we did that, it was the summer of 2021, that you had something, like, you wanted people to hear you. You had something you had to prove. And I feel like you don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Your softness, your warmth, your humor, your sensuality, your sexuality, your playfulness, like, all that has come out, and it's gorgeous. I adore you. Absolutely.
Thank you for seeing me. Yeah, it's because I realized that I live this magnificent life. I am in love overflow. My children are in love with me. They're in love with their life. They don't suffer. And by the way, I had one child who really suffered for a long time, but we've worked through that. And I have a husband that adores me. I have friendships, like true, deep friendships. Like 2 years ago, I had friends, but I didn't have friendships, right? Like, I didn't have people that I could just call and be like, I just want to say that I love you. Like, I love you to the core. I love who you are as a human. I accept you for who you are, even if we don't agree on things. Like, I just love, like it's like this love of overflow. And it's like, when I speak now, I don't have anything to prove. It's like, if you want to listen, great. If you want to follow, amazing. If I can take you on this path that I'm on, we're both going to be happy. And if we're both happy, then that just leads to more happiness in the world, because we're spreading this love and this light. And what greater thing is there than to make people happy?
Shilamida, you're living in the epitome of what I would call abundance.
Yeah.
You're rich in so many things. You have so many people that love you, but most importantly, I think that what's really, really apparent with you is how much you love yourself and how much you've accepted yourself, and you're allowing yourself to be like an oracle and a channel, and that's, I think, the greatest blessing that any of us can have.
It's so funny you said that, because last night in Conversations with God, I was reading that we have to be self-centered. Ben walks in the room and I was like, guess what God just said? His husband
It's
of
called
mine.
sacredly selfish.
Yeah. And, the whole self-love part and the self-care part. And, when I was an acupuncturist, if you would have asked me to go for a massage or to go to lunch or to go to any of the things, no, it was my patients came first. I had to work. I had to take care of others. And now it's, well, do I have to take a bath? Is it time for me to lay in the bed? Right? It's I come first. And by me coming first, I'm able to do so much more good in the world.
Gorgeous. You're living your soul purpose, babe.
I love it. And I love you. And I love that we get to do life together. And it's just so much fun. So Lynn, if people want to find you, tell me, where can they find you online?
So if you can find me everywhere. My profile is Rev Lynn LaBorde on TikTok. It's Rev Lynn LaBorde on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel with over 1,500 videos that's called the sohmalife Sanctuary, SOHMALIFE. My website is sohmalife.com, SOHMALIFE.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Lynn LaBorde Eastman. And I'm everywhere.
Just so the audience knows, people can work with you one-to-one, and you also teach people on how to connect to these spiritual gifts, right? And how to read the Akashic records.
Yep. I have a year-long curriculum in which I take people through 7 different classes that correspond to each of the chakras. So they're learning how to do healing at the root. They're learning about sexuality in their sacral. They're learning about abundance through their solar plexus. They're learning about quantum relationships in their heart, quantum communication through the throat. Quantum intelligence, which is how to go into the Akashic records, both the past, the present, the future, like in simultaneous lifetimes. They're learning how to do soul reclamation, which is incredible. How to call back parts of themselves that they've let go, that have become hardened and petrified, and how to make them all zhuzhy and juicy again. And then quantum spirituality is working with the crown chakra. I do one-on-one healing work with people. I have been doing that work for 33 years, and I am extraordinary with it. It's something I've really, really mastered. I know how to take the places where you're stuck and where you're blocked and help you to unblock those. People find themselves being mediums, psychics, and channels out of being in my community because they calibrate, to my energy doing that. I'm a certified hypnotist, a licensed minister. So everything that's said in session is held as sacred. Like sometimes when you're doing work with people and they come across trauma, or they come across things in the past that have been really difficult for them, they're scared that if they told you the full truth, that, it would be reported to the authorities. And sometimes people come up with some crazy stuff. So because, being under the auspices of a ministry, it's really safe for them. And love as a function of communication is one of the basic tenets that I live by. So I help people learn how to get in communication with themselves, with the people that are closest to them, and with their own higher self, which is basically like their soul and their direct connection with God. And boy, does it turn on psychic abilities like crazy. It's really fun.
I love that. I think Bennett is going to be your youngest student, and I feel like we're going to do your year-long together. For those of you that are joining me for the very first time, welcome. For those of you that listen to the show or watch the show every week, I thank you. I'm so grateful for you. You can also find me all across social media by spelling my first name correctly, Shilamida, Shilamida. My website is www.shilamida.com. You can find me on Instagram at 50 Shades of Shilamida and Goddess of Gratitude. If you are listening to the show on your favorite podcast station, you can also watch the show on my YouTube channel at 50 Shades of Shilamida. If you are watching on YouTube, come find me on Facebook. I am Shilamida Cooperstein, soon to be Friedman, my married name. And I just love you, and I love having these conversations, and I love the ability to have this show and to be able to spread truth and light and love the way that we see it, so that other weirdos like us know that they are not alone, that there are thousands upon thousands of us
Millions.
roaming this world, right? Any last thoughts for the audience, Lynn, before we sign off?
Just that I'm grateful to have you in my life. I love you. I treasure our friendship, and I look forward to the path that we walk together.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Namaste, bitches.
Namaste, bitches.
Mwah.
Love you.
Love you.
Bye.